What about for someone who already meditates and does yoga and is somewhat in tune with their body? How would Train for Birth still be helpful?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I incorporate a lot of yoga-like moves into the program, but I just call your attention to different deeper muscle groups as you do them. So it can enhance your yoga practice, and I would say even any kind of meditative, self-reflective, self-care process means you already have some built-in self-awareness, or you're working on cultivating that. And so this will again just add and supplement to that.
Yeah, and I guess probably with the background in physical therapy, you're able to talk about the muscles activating more. Yeah. So I'm sure that's helpful for people too.
Right. And just as a non-prenatal example too, like I'll take people who have been practicing yoga for years and modify it in certain ways, and they're like, wow, I've never felt that way.
Okay.
And that's the beautiful thing about yoga, I think, is it can always be enhanced or changed or modified.
Totally, yeah. How did you come up with your research for Train for Birth?
Okay. So a lot of it draws on some of the gold standard for pelvic health education is Herman and Wallace, and then the Institute of Manual Therapy has its own pelvic health course. So that was like, my foundational knowledge. And then I subscribe to this like push technology that will send me any of the most recent articles that have been published about pelvic health, about women's health. So I would read each of those articles, assimilate the knowledge, and interpret them and put them in a way that makes them more understandable.
Cool, okay.
Mm-hmm.
What are Kegels? I know everyone talks about Kegels. Can you kind of explain that to us?
Right, okay. So if you think about the pelvic floor as a hammock, where it connects from the front to the back, and the Kegel is the action of lifting that muscle group, and can sometimes feel like a drawstring. And some people feel it more in the front, more in the back, and that's okay. So it's really just a contraction of the pelvic floor. It's important to lift because you're working it against gravity, but especially in the instance of pregnancy, it's also important to lower the pelvic floor and stretch it and bearing down, because if you're having a vaginal birth, that's what your body needs to know how to do with ease and comfort. And a lot of times I'll see instances where people have held on to their pelvic floor too tightly, and then the pushing down and the natural urges to push, and that creating that internal tension is what predisposes women to tear. So practicing both Kegels, but also the opposite of Kegels is really important during pregnancy.
The lowering, okay. Mm-hmm. And then I've heard you're not supposed to do it while you urinate. Why is that?
Right, so you're not supposed to do Kegels on the commode because your bladder is also a muscle, and so your bladder and your pelvic floor kind of have this communication system where while one is on, the other is relaxing, and that's what allows urine to flow from the bladder through the opening. But if you contract pelvic floor and lift it, then it signals the bladder to withhold the urine.
Okay.
And so you don't want to create a UTI type situation there, or confuse that relationship between the two muscle groups.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and as someone who's pregnant right now, I feel like it's always a little tough to fully expel all the urine anyway. So I'm sure trying to do that while you're urinating would be even more challenging. Pregnant. So yeah. Okay. And then I've heard there's a connection between the pelvic floor and the diaphragm. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Ooh, it's one of my favorite relationships of muscles in the whole body. It's really fascinating because they have an inverse relationship. So when you exhale, then your pelvic floor lifts. When you inhale, your pelvic floor lowers. So the breath can be used if you're not quite confident in doing a conscious Kegel, and you can't quite feel it. Just breathing intentionally and fully affects the pelvic floor. So even if you never did a Kegel in your life, you could work on pelvic floor health through your breath.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. And I don't always love the idea of inhale, exhale, then Kegel, like that specific sequence. That can be one to help you lift the pelvic floor, and it can be used as a drill essentially, but ideally we want both the pelvic floor and the diaphragm to function both independently and synchronously, and not always in this
not like a step by step, but
Right.
more, working together.
Okay. More organically.
Oh, awesome. Well, I have been doing the Train4Birth, and I'm through the 5th section right now, so I've been doing my exercises and that kind of thing. And one of the things that I find really helpful, compared to some other birthing programs or prenatal programs, it's not necessarily geared exactly for just the birth. It seems like for the health of mama and baby throughout the entire experience. And
Right.
as you said, it seems like it would translate well afterward as well. Just to kind of maintain a better sense of body awareness and overall health. So I found that really enjoyable so
Yay,
far.
That's great. Yeah. I tried to design it in a way that it's specific to pregnancy and the pregnancy experience, but it would benefit all women.
Really? Yeah.
And kind of educate in a way that helps you understand your body long term. And I just had a thought too that another way that Train4Birth is a little bit different is that I kind of walk you through how your body changes both prenatally and postnatally. There's all these apps on what size baby is as you grow, how your own organs are changing throughout pregnancy, but then there's not a lot out there about how the body is reorganizing itself afterward. And so I really like to say that half my job is encouraging people to move, and then half of it is encouraging people to like calm down a little bit and heal. And so giving yourself a lot of grace to heal after the fact, I think I try to set that mindset early. And also there's a cardio component too.
Yes.
That's where I felt actually, even as a physical therapist, lost about how much is the right amount to do. I don't want to hurt my baby's heart rate, that kind of thing. And so I included some specific guidelines on that.
I loved that because I wasn't exactly sure what would be safe or not, and how far I could really push myself. But just the level of research that you included, it was really helpful for me to kind of go by, and I felt much more confident when I was during the time period when I was running and doing some more active stuff. I'm still doing some, but not as much as I was.
So let's talk about that. Like, what has your relationship with running and cardio even been while you've been pregnant?
Yeah, so up until about 23 weeks, I was, not doing like really intense running, but jogging and getting cardio primarily that way. And then as I've, gained a little more baby weight, it's just become more challenging. It's not quite as comfortable. So I'm just right now just walking very quickly, for cardio up hills, taking the stairs at work, and then doing, different kind of exercises to kind of get the heart rate up.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. The point that runners reach a level of discomfort while pregnant is different for everybody, and I really just encourage you to listen to your own body on that. For me, it was first trimester to not feel comfortable at all, and so there is a aspect of being mindful, because that is extra pressure on the pelvic floor to run while pregnant. So I do encourage a little bit more slowing down, or perhaps decreasing mileage a little bit. It's not a requirement, but just a way to care for your pelvic floor.